Imagine having, like, a life-altering medical emergency, right?
Yeah.
You go to the doctor, you describe your symptoms, and they just start a treatment plan.
Which is, exactly what we all expect to happen.
Exactly. But now imagine that the doctors don't actually figure out what is truly wrong with you for, like, 3,650 days?
Wow. Yeah, putting it in days really, it hits differently. That's a staggering amount of time.
It really is. Today's deep dive is about this massive 10-year blind spot in modern healthcare.
Right. It's a systemic failure, really, in how the medical field identifies and treats one of the most common, yet somehow completely misunderstood psychiatric conditions.
We are looking at a full decade of lost time for millions of people. And we're going to figure out how this happens and, more importantly, how it's actually being fixed.
Because the fixes are out there, which is the incredible part.
Yeah, they are. So our sources today include clinical notes and service frameworks from Coping and Healing Counseling. They go by CHC.
Right. They're a highly specialized telehealth therapy practice based out of Georgia.
Right. So our mission today is to uncover why this specific mental health condition routinely evades medical professionals for an entire decade. And, how modern tools are actively stepping in to close that extremely dangerous gap.
Yeah, we're dissecting the mechanics of the problem, but we're also really analyzing the mechanics of the solution because the systemic changes happening right now are just revolutionary for patient outcomes.
Absolutely. So whether you're actively navigating the mental health system yourself or supporting a loved one, or even if you're just fascinated by the quirks of human psychology and medical diagnostics, understanding this blind spot could literally save years of suffering.
It's just so applicable to everyone, really.
Yeah, so let's just jump right into the deep end. The most shocking fact to come out of these clinical notes is that 10-year figure.
Right, the decade delay.
Yeah. On average, a patient will wait 10 full years to get an accurate diagnosis for bipolar disorder.
And, just think about the collateral damage of a decade. That is 10 years of potentially lost jobs, strained relationships.
Oh, absolutely.
And just profound confusion about your own mind, all while actively seeking medical help, which is the crazy part.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, a 10-year delay sounds like, well, massive medical negligence.
Sure, it sounds like somebody is dropping the ball.
Like, how do you miss a major psychiatric condition for that long? But reading through the clinical psychology of it, let's look at it this way.
Okay.
It's like taking your car to the mechanic only when it won't start. Drag it into the shop, you tell the mechanic the engine is completely dead, it's sluggish, it won't move at all.
Right, the obvious problem.
But you completely forget to mention that, like, last week, the car was spontaneously accelerating to 120 miles per hour on the highway all by itself. You just thought you finally had a fantastic high-performance engine.
Oh, that is such a perfect way to visualize the mechanism of this misdiagnosis. I love that analogy.
Right, because it shifts the blame, kind of.
It does. The 10-year delay fundamentally comes down to the limitations of patient self-reporting. Human beings are pragmatic.
Yeah, we really are.
We seek medical intervention when we are in pain or when our ability to function is severely compromised.
Right, we only call the mechanic when the car refuses to move.
Exactly. And bipolar disorder, by its clinical definition, involves these dramatic cycles. So patients typically present to primary care physicians during their depressive episodes.
Because that's when it hurts.
Yeah, they walk into the clinic feeling just this crushing weight. They report the extreme lows, the profound fatigue, the cognitive fog, the complete lack of motivation, the deep sadness.
And that reporting is completely genuine. They were genuinely suffering.
Oh, absolutely. It's totally real. But they are leaving out the high-speed highway driving, to use your analogy.
A hypomanic or manic periods.
Exactly. Because the psychology of hypomania works totally against the diagnostic process. Those periods of elevated mood, they often feel incredible to the person experiencing them.
Wow, so they don't even see it as a problem.
No, not at all. Imagine spending months in a dark room of depression and suddenly someone turns all the lights on.
That would feel amazing.
Right. You have boundless energy. Your thoughts are racing, but in a way that feels intensely creative. You suddenly only need 3 hours of sleep a night, and you wake up feeling completely ready to conquer the world.
You feel like you beat the depression. You literally feel like a superhero.
Yeah. And you do not go to a doctor to complain about feeling like a superhero.
No, definitely not.
It feels like a cure, not a symptom. So when the patient is sitting on the exam table, they just do not spontaneously report those highs.
Why would they?
Exactly. And the primary care physician, who let's be honest, usually has about 15 minutes to conduct an evaluation.
If they're lucky.
Right. They rely entirely on what the patient says. So the doctor sees the profound sadness, evaluates those symptoms, and writes down a diagnosis of standard unipolar depression.
Which makes sense based on what they're hearing.
It does. They're making a completely logical medical decision based on incomplete data.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure.
Isn't treating the depression better than doing nothing at all? I mean, even if the doctor misses the bipolar part and only sees half the picture, aren't antidepressants at least fixing the low?
It's a really common thought process.
Right, like, shouldn't we be glad the patient is getting a ladder out of that hole?
This raises an important question because it sounds incredibly intuitive to assume that treating half the problem is, a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But medically, in the context of bipolar disorder, that assumption is actually perilous. It is arguably the most dangerous aspect of this whole 10-year blind spot.
Wait, really?
Yeah?
The most dangerous?
Yeah. Getting the diagnosis wrong isn't just a matter of having the wrong label on a medical chart. It completely alters the chemical intervention, and the wrong intervention can cause catastrophic destabilization.
Okay, break down the neurobiology for us here. How does the quote-unquote cure for depression make bipolar disorder worse?
So let's look at what is actually happening in the brain. When a doctor diagnoses standard depression, the standard protocol is to prescribe an antidepressant.
Like an SSRI, right?
Exactly. Typically an SSRI, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Using this medication all by itself is clinically known as SSRI monotherapy.
Okay, got it.
Now, in a brain with unipolar depression, the SSRI helps keep more serotonin available in the neural synapses, which, over time, gradually lifts the mood back to a normal baseline.
That makes sense. Elevate the chemicals, elevate the mood.
Right. But a brain with bipolar disorder is wired differently. It is fundamentally cyclical, meaning its baseline is already structurally unstable.
It's already moving.
Yes. It is like a coiled spring. If you introduce an SSRI alone to that specific brain architecture, you are not just lifting them back to a normal baseline.
Oh boy.
The antidepressant acts almost like a chemical slingshot. It completely bypasses normal and can launch the patient violently out of the depressive episode and straight into a severe manic or hypomanic state.
Oh my gosh. So you're basically strapping a rocket engine to a car that doesn't have any brakes.
That is the exact mechanism of the danger. SSRI monotherapy acts as a powerful stimulant to a cyclical brain.
Wow.
It can trigger rapid cycling where the patient just swings violently back and forth between profound depression and severe mania.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And it can induce mixed states, which are these highly agitated, highly dangerous periods where the patient experiences the energy of mania alongside the despair of depression.
That's terrifying. So treating the low without a mood stabilizer to manage the high just disrupts whatever fragile biological balance the patient had left.
Exactly.
Putting those two facts together just paints a terrifying picture of our medical landscape.
It really does.
Because, patients are waiting a full decade to get the correct diagnosis. And during that decade, because they are only reporting the bad days, they are actively being prescribed medications that backfire.
Yes.
They're taking pills they think will save them, and instead, the medication is chemically destabilizing their entire lives.
It is a horrific systemic loop of miscommunication leading to iatrogenic harm. And that just means harm caused by the medical treatment itself.
Right. So how do we stop this?
Well, to break that loop, the medical system cannot wait for the patient to spontaneously realize their good days are actually symptoms. The system has to proactively hunt for the missing data before the prescription pad is ever touched.
Right. If the prescription pad is essentially a landmine for these patients, how do doctors catch the warning signs before they write the script?
That's the key.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because hidden inside these clinical notes from coping and healing counseling is a diagnostic tool that actively intercepts this exact problem.
Yes, it's brilliant.
Yeah, refer to it as a diagnostic pearl for primary care.
It is a total pivot in diagnostic strategy. They use the MDQ, or the Mood Disorder Questionnaire.
Okay, walk us through the mechanics of the MDQ. Why does a piece of paper succeed where a doctor's evaluation fails?
Well, the MDQ bypasses the whole flaw of self-reporting by forcing the cyclical nature of the mood into the light.
Because they won't volunteer the information.
Right. We established that a patient won't just say, "Hey, doc, I felt euphoric last month and didn't need to sleep." The MDQ doesn't wait for them to volunteer it.
It forces the issue.
Exactly. It is a highly validated 13-item screening tool that directly asks the questions the patient didn't know they needed to answer.
Give us some examples. What kind of questions are we talking about here?
It asks things like, has there ever been a period of time where you felt so good or hyper that other people thought you were not your normal self?
Oh, wow. That's very specific.
Yeah, or did you find that you needed much less sleep than usual and didn't really miss it?
Hunting for the high-speed driving.
Right. It asks about periods of extreme irritability, racing thoughts, or engaging in unusually risky behaviors regarding money or relationships.
It's specifically hunting for that 120-mile-per-hour highway driving you wouldn't naturally bring up.
And it does so incredibly efficiently. Running this screener on any patient who walks into a clinic complaining of recurrent depression fundamentally alters their clinical trajectory.
It stops the mistake before it happens.
Yes, it functions as a critical pre-referral tool. Before a physician even considers initiating SSRI monotherapy, they administer the MDQ.
Okay.
And if it flags positive for cyclical traits, the physician knows instantly that an antidepressant alone is medically contraindicated.
And honestly, the most incredible detail from our sources is how aggressively accessible this intercept has become.
Yes, it's a huge shift.
CHC hasn't locked this behind, like a paywall or a specialized psychiatric referral that takes months to get.
No, they haven't.
They have made this exact MDQ screener freely available to the public. Anyone listening to this right now can literally go to agtaketherapy.com mental health tests.
It's right there.
Yeah, it takes 2 minutes to complete, and it scores instantly.
Just think about the leverage of those 2 minutes.
It's wild.
2 minutes of answering targeted questions can intercept 10 years of misdiagnosis and chemical destabilization. I mean, in terms of medical interventions, that is an astonishing return on investment.
Oh, completely. I compare that to, traditional psychological testing, where you might wait 6 months just to get an intake appointment.
Oh, easily.
You sit through hours of clinical evaluations, and you pay thousands of dollars out of pocket. Having a 2-minute intercept sitting right there on a smartphone changes the game entirely.
It does, but we do have to clarify the clinical function of a screener, though.
Okay, let's clarify that.
An online test is an intercept, right? It's not a destination. A positive screen on the MDQ means the patient has a high probability of a cyclical mood disorder, which requires immediate, highly nuanced care.
So it's step 1.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The screener acts as a smoke detector. It alerts you to the fire in the house, but it does not put the fire out.
That's a great way to put it. Which brings us to the next massive hurdle in the system. Let's walk through a hypothetical patient journey here. Say you take this free 2-minute test, and it flags a high probability of bipolar disorder. Yeah. You now possess this vital, life-altering information.
Yes.
But how do you actually get the complex care you need?
Yeah.
Especially if you are, completely overwhelmed or isolated or living in a rural area where psychiatric specialists essentially don't even exist.
Yeah, and that gap between identifying the problem and delivering the solution is where the current mental health system often completely breaks down.
It just stalls out.
It really does. Diagnosing and treating complex conditions like bipolar disorder, major depression, or trauma, it requires a deeply integrated clinical effort.
Which is hard to find.
Very hard. Handing a patient a bipolar diagnosis and sending them out into the world to find their own therapist and their own psychiatrist is basically a recipe for clinical failure.
They are essentially stranded on an island just holding a label.
That's exactly what it feels like. Effective modern treatment requires the therapeutic side and the medical side to communicate constantly.
Like actually talking to each other.
Yes. A framework like the one utilized by CHC operates on an integrated care model. The therapists conducting the talk therapy coordinate directly with the prescribers handling the medication.
But why is that continuous communication so vital for these specific disorders?
Because, as we said, a cyclical brain is always moving.
Ah, right.
If the prescriber knows the therapist is actively monitoring the patient's subtle mood shifts week to week, the medical team can adjust the dosages safely.
They can catch the swing before it happens.
Yes. If the therapist notices the patient is starting to talk faster or sleeping less, early signs of hypomania, they immediately alert the prescriber.
Wow.
The prescriber can immediately adjust the mood stabilizers to prevent a full manic episode, completely avoiding the destabilization we discussed earlier.
Well, that level of synchronization is incredibly rare. Usually, the left hand has absolutely no idea what the right hand is doing in medicine.
Oh, it's notoriously disjointed.
But looking at the structural solutions proposed in these sources, coping and healing counseling is really demonstrating how you scale that integrated care to an entire population.
They really are.
because they operate as a 100% telehealth IPA-compliant practice covering all 159 counties in the state of Georgia.
And we have to highlight that shifting to a fully telehealth model for psychiatric care is not just an administrative convenience, it is a profound structural intervention.
Unpack that for us. How does that physically alter a patient's life trajectory?
Well, consider the geography of mental health.
Okay.
If you live in a rural farming community, the nearest psychiatrist specializing in mood disorders might be a 3-hour drive away.
Easily.
Right. And if you are experiencing a severe depressive episode, the sheer executive function required to secure transportation, drive 3 hours, sit in a waiting room, and drive 3 hours back, it's just physically impossible.
The geography itself becomes the barrier to wellness.
Exactly. The telehealth model completely neutralizes the map.
It's brilliant.
As long as you have an internet connection, you have access to a specialized clinical team, whether you are in a high-rise in Atlanta or a farm in South Georgia.
You eliminate the commute entirely. You eliminate the need to secure childcare for a whole afternoon.
You eliminate the social stigma of being seen walking into a psychiatric clinic.
That's a huge one.
It is.
Yeah.
You bring the integrated care directly into the safety of the patient's own environment.
And the sources detail that this isn't just a basic bare-bones triage setup either.
No, not at all.
CHC utilizes a massive, diverse team of licensed therapists. We're talking clinical social workers, professional counselors, marriage and family therapists.
The whole spectrum.
Yeah, but the clinical notes specifically emphasize that this is a culturally competent team. So why is cultural competency highlighted as a medical necessity here, rather than just like a corporate buzzword?
That's a really great point to pull out,
Right.
because treating complex mood disorders or severe trauma relies entirely on accurate data collection from the patient.
Right, the self-reporting we talked about.
Exactly. We already know that patients hide their symptoms. If a patient sits across from a therapist who does not understand their specific cultural background, their community expectations, or their lived experience, they will not feel safe.
And if they don't feel safe, the communication shuts down immediately.
The nuance just vanishes. The patient will mask their symptoms, they will downplay their cycles, and the clinical team is instantly thrown back into that 10-year blind spot.
Wow, so it all connects back to the blind spot.
It does. Cultural competency builds the immediate trust required to get a patient to talk honestly about the darkest and most chaotic parts of their mind.
It's the foundation that allows the medical intervention to actually work.
Exactly.
And their ecosystem approach to treatment really reflects that need for deep understanding. They aren't just treating the individual in a vacuum, right?
No, because these disorders don't happen in a vacuum.
Right. A bipolar diagnosis or severe anxiety or PTSD, it sends shockwaves through an entire family. CHC provides individual therapy, but they also integrate couples therapy, family counseling, and teen therapy for kids 13 and older.
Because a psychiatric condition does not isolate itself to the patient. It alters the marriage dynamic, it changes how parents interact with their children, it impacts a teenager's ability to survive high school.
It touches everything.
It really does. Treating the individual often fails if you do not simultaneously treat and educate the ecosystem surrounding them.
That makes so much sense. But even with the perfect diagnostic tools, the integrated care, and the geographic barriers removed by telehealth, there is always one final wall.
The financial reality.
Yep, the financial reality. Psychiatric care is notoriously expensive, and that alone stops millions of people from ever taking the MDQ screener in the first place.
The financial lockout is just the ultimate tragic irony of the mental health system.
Heartbreaking.
It is, because the patients who are most debilitated by conditions like bipolar disorder are often the least capable of maintaining the high-paying jobs required to afford out-of-pocket psychiatric care.
Which is exactly why the pricing structure outlined in these CHC notes is genuinely revolutionary.
It's a game changer.
They have completely rewritten the accessibility equation. For patients utilizing Medicaid, the copay is $0.
Zero.
Let that sink in. $0 for specialized, culturally competent, integrated telehealth care. And for patients with major commercial insurance, Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross, United, Humana, the sessions run just $25 to $40.
Which is basically the cost of a takeout dinner.
Exactly. And they even drop their contact info right in the notes for anyone needing help getting started. It's 404-832-0102 or support@ggenetherapy.com.
By setting that specific financial structure, they have systematically dismantled the 3 towering roadblocks to psychiatric wellness.
All 3 of them.
Yes. They eliminate the diagnostic delay using the MDQ screener. They eliminate the geographical isolation using a statewide telehealth infrastructure, and they eliminate the wealth barrier by ensuring Medicaid accessibility.
It really is a blueprint for what modern healthcare should look like everywhere.
It's a profound example of systemic problem solving.
It really is. Remember, if you want to see how this model works, or if you need to utilize that free MDQ intercept tool we talked about, their website is tolldaxtherapy.com.
Highly recommend checking it out.
So what does this all mean for us? Let's take a step back and look at the journey we've mapped out today.
Okay.
We started with a terrifying medical mystery, a 10-year gap between a human being suffering and a medical professional figuring out why.
A gap driven by the illusion of feeling good, where patients simply do not report the high-speed, manic days because they mistake the symptoms for a cure.
We explored the neurobiological danger of that silence. We saw how a primary care doctor, acting on incomplete data, might prescribe SSRI monotherapy,
Right, that linear chemical solution that acts as a slingshot, launching a cyclical bipolar brain straight into severe destabilization.
which highlighted the absolute necessity of the 2-minute intercept.
The MDQ screener.
Yes, the MDQ screener, a fast, free tool that proactively hunts for the cycles before the prescription pad is ever touched.
Crucial step.
And finally, we looked at how breaking down the geographic and financial barriers through integrated telehealth allows patients to actually survive and manage these complex diagnoses.
Because knowing the diagnosis is only half the battle.
Right, the overarching lesson for all of us is that mental health is rarely a straight line. You have to look at the whole picture, the highs, just as much as the lows.
As we wrap up this analysis, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to really mull over.
Oh, I love these.
We spent a lot of time today discussing how hypomania evades medical detection because it feels incredible, right?
Yeah.
The symptoms manifest as boundless energy, racing thoughts, extreme productivity, and a complete lack of a need for sleep.
The exact traits of a high-performance engine.
Exactly. But look at the world we live in. We exist in a modern culture that actively glorifies every single one of those traits.
Oh, totally. We reward the hustle.
We do. We praise the visionary who burns the midnight oil and works 80-hour weeks without sleeping.
We'll put them on magazine covers.
We do. So it makes you wonder how much of our society's definition of extreme success is actually just masking underlying mental health conditions.
Wow.
How many titans of industry are secretly suffering from cyclical disorders that desperately need a nuanced, balanced approach rather than, a round of applause?
That is such a profound question.
Yeah.
Are we just handing out awards to people whose engines are spinning out of control right before they crash?
It changes how you look at the fast lane entirely.
It really does.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take care of yourselves, and remember to pay attention to the whole cycle.